today's episode of Future Says, we have Sahar Asadi, AI research lead at King. Prior to joining the famous creators of Candy Crush, she had applied research to user experience at Spotify, distributed deep learning at Cluster One, NLP at Meltwater, and product recognition at Oculus AI. She's also a co-founder of Women in Data Science, AI and ML Sweden. Hello and welcome to Future Says, Sahar. Great to have you on the show to talk about all things AI in gaming.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So I guess the shared histories of AI and gaming are inextricably linked through the years. We've seen a lot of use cases. It dates all the way back to the late 1940s when the first one-player online chess game was initially considered. Through the years, of course, things have gotten bigger and better than ever before, but one thing has always remained constant, that the gaming industry has been one of the earliest adopters of new, novel, groundbreaking research in AI for a range of use cases, creating more realistic gaming environments, accelerating the game and level development process, things like personalization, content automation, we've all seen. And many people would go so far as to say that AI is not just transforming gaming, but with that, it's transforming how humans in general act with, perceive, and sort of interact with artificial intelligence. So it's a very, very exciting time. And King themselves have about 300 million monthly gamers. So they have a scale that most people in the industry can only dream about. And with the gaming industry set to topple $250 billion by 2025, there's no better time to talk about this and no better person than Sahar Asadi to tell us all about it. So Sahar, let's jump right in and can you talk to us about the evolution of AI in gaming and where we sort of fit today?
Sure. I think you gave a very good intro, where it started. Last year I had a lecture at the university where I was telling about the history, and if you look at it, it's even a definition of artificial intelligence also started from together with the trying to solve games and puzzles. And has been the gaming has been used as a test bed for AI. But also, you would be surprised to see that a lot of gaming teams, gaming companies didn't started with having AI as their core part of their business, because there's a lot of easy wins that you could have with heuristics, and at the same time also there's a lot of creative elements that builds games. But recent years, by recent years, I mean the past decade, this has changed. So a lot of gaming companies started looking more at in applying AI in different aspects. So looking at automation around content, looking at personalizations, game economies, and chatbots and narratives in gaming. If you think about also the other side of how AI is contributing to the development of AI, and think about companies like DeepMind and research groups in academia, a lot of interesting things are coming out from there with the goal of achieving general AI, getting towards that direction. And also using AI, using gaming as a test bed for developing new ideas. We see a lot of progress in reinforcement learning, in using generative models that is happening by using gaming as a test bed.
And can you dig into some of those use cases then? I think you're 2.5 years or so at King, yeah. Sahar. So what have you spent most of your time at?
So, the time that I've spent at King has been in a couple of areas. One of them, which has been very exciting, is around content automation. So, creating content is one of the important pillars in gaming. And there's a lot of creative work that goes through by designers. And having that, it also improves the quality of the game experience that users have. But also, there are a lot of steps that they are repetitive and they are time consuming. And we would like to take away those steps and rather have designers to spend time on creative side of it. So with that, our team has been focusing on two areas. Validating content, so before releasing content to players, validating its quality, and helping designers to iterate faster and test the quality of the levels in terms of the dynamic of the gameplay by designing playtesting bots. And the other aspect is around generation. So if there are a lot of levels, for instance, in Candy Crush, that because some design principles has changed, or we got to a point we would like to refine some of those levels. So how we can automatically tweak those levels. So so for those two, we started big projects. So we have developed a bot that is already part of the production and designers use for validating the content. And we have published there on those. We've looked at supervised learning methods. We have looked at also reinforcement learning. And the other side is for content tweaking, where we managed to put together this validating bot together with some evolutionary methods together to create a content tweaking agent, and being able to release some of the levels with this bot actually was something exciting to see. And the second part is more around understanding more the user experience, so looking at clustering of users. One of the things that I really like, and we have been spending time, is that a lot of research that happens in universities is hard to bring them and use them directly in industry. So we have been investigating what are the requirements of industrial applications, especially in gaming. And if you want to use clustering, and also recommender systems to areas that we looked at and we have published there, how you can improve the state of the art in order to be able to solve and address the scale and the complexity of the dynamics that you have in gaming, especially mobile games.
Okay. And how do you actually measure the benefits that these use cases are bringing King?
I think you're touching on a very good, or interesting topic. It's very challenging to be a researcher in industry because you also need to support and understand the business cases, and also align your time and priorities based on those, right? So we've put a framework, for instance, where we are looking at different phases. So we have discovery, we have proof of concept, development, and operationalizing machine learning. And in discovery phase, we basically go crazy, try out ideas. We look at previous work, we look at data and opportunities. And it's usually a short cycle. And where after this initial assessment, we look at estimate of how long time this research will take, the potential business impact that it can bring, and try to pitch that as an idea and to get prioritization on. Then proof of concept is a longer time that we get after showcasing with this discovery phase. And then we spend time on a project.
And the last phase you mentioned was sort of operationalization.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's something I've seen you present before, Sahar. So can you talk to us about AI ops, the benefits that would bring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. One of the interesting things that or developments that recently we had at King is investing further in machine learning to democratize it and make it accessible for everyone in the company to use, especially data scientists. And then also understanding better where you have more production systems, how to maintain them and support them and be able to scale the work that we do. And for that, we started having a sister team to my team, which is called MLOps. It's turning to a hot topic, the past couple of years, as you know, and the goal there is to not provide tools and APIs and also like platform where we are taking away all of these complications of engineering from data scientists to be able to explore the data, train their model, and then easily deploy it and monitor it, and if needed to retrain it, and look at like also like their features and get insights about. The thing is that the tools and engineering packages, they are developing fast and things change quickly. And for a data scientist to be able to be the Swiss army of solving everything and spending 80% of the time actually on fixing the engineering challenges is something that I think we should move away from. And that is one of the ambitions of having such a platform like MLOps.
So do you think MLOps is as important as, investing in MLOps is as important as investing in ML model development? Should it really be hand in hand? Should there be no scale in terms of maturity? Every company doing ML should be doing MLOps as well?
I think it really depends on what type of company and what level of AI maturity we are talking about. There are good articles that they are talking about maturity stages. Do we have the culture and adoption in the company? Do we have the data available and data models available in the company? And then the modeling, so sometimes you don't really, the company might go with two models, and the models, they don't need sensitive SLAs or like low latencies. You don't really need that much support of operationalizing. And you might just want to have it in the one simple team, like ML engineers doing this job, or like hiring just one ML ops engineer as part of an ML team to do it. But if you get to a larger companies, that is something that is inevitable. I also want to highlight that there are a lot of good platforms. So I wouldn't say a company would need to get into building everything by themselves. There are also both open source, but also enterprises that can be used. So as a first step, I would avoid that. But at the same time, it's important if the company is in a certain level of maturity in AI to consider that nothing comes for free. Right, and you need to invest and consider that there is you need this initial investment to be able to have this enablers for the data scientists to be able to have great amazing works in production.
Yeah, I think you mentioned an interesting point on hiring, and I know Gartner said for the coming year one of the emerging roles is an XOps coach. Yeah. Is that something you're looking at King? I know you've been hiring quite recently, Sahar.
Mm-hmm. So we don't have, or we are not planning to have something like XOps, but we have XOps coach, but we are hiring, we currently have 2 ML ops engineers in our team. And building up that team definitely requires different set of skills, existing ones, data engineers, ML engineers, and ML ops together. But also thinking about what comes next in future. I think there are also some other areas, for instance, advocates for ethics, especially in Europe. AI ethics and fairness is something important, especially with EU legislations around AI trustworthiness and topics around responsible AI. It's important to have advisory groups that they are looking at fairness and being able to have to explain what happens for the user and how AI is used and move away from AI as a black box. So I see that's one also becoming a big future role.
So you've just introduced my favorite topic, Sahar, in terms of sort of responsible AI. So can you tell us at King how you ensure transparency in your division?
So, like my personal motto, and also that is kind of aligned with what our team motto is to bring research to product and production responsibly. And so we are trying to, I think it's important to consider that in the hiring as well. So like, that should be part of the culture that like you care about like you have a diverse team that reflects on like, thinking about what the user of the user experience would be and believes and cares about that. So that's a very first step that we have been looking at. Then the second part dimension is also like looking at explainability and interpretability. For instance, now we have an intern working on this topic. We have an industrial PhD student who would touch on this topic in her thesis as well, where we want to know, like, if you are, like, if you're, first of all, whether we use, like, right features, and if you're using these features, how this affects the output of the model. So, and integrating explainability as part of like platform of machine learning is an important piece that our team is striving for. So those are a few like, areas that we have been trying to consider. And then like, as a third pillar is also like, bringing awareness to the company, right? So we have been also giving talks about like, responsible AI and how this affects this, and like, bringing that into also considerations in operations and executions.
Yeah, and I think that ties into something you mentioned earlier in terms of the culture. So when you want to
Yeah.
democratize data, oftentimes the biggest obstacle is culture. So
Yeah.
this sort of awareness workshops you do, Sahar, can you tell us a bit more about that, and how would you advise other companies to create this data-driven culture?
I think so. The thing is that nowadays a lot of companies are data driven, right? But it's also important to know what kind of data we are using and why we are using, and being cautious and mindful of that. So King is a very diversity and inclusion aware company. So there's a lot of workshops that are happening inside the company, or like, having also like groups, for instance, Women at King, or like Kaleidoscope that is about like, different ethnicities, and many other groups that we have, that they are promoting a lot of these different aspects about uh, both about like, employees, but also that is reflecting also our users that we are
Yeah,
bringing in.
and of course, Sahar, you're being modest here, but of course, you don't just work at King, and you do a lot of work outside of King. So could you tell the audience more about Women in Data Science Stockholm and some of your initiatives in that space?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, I mean that's something very close to my heart. So since now almost 5 years ago, we started with two of my co-founders, Galina Shubrina and Rebecca Jakobsson. We started Women in Data Science Sweden. Uh, Now we've changed recently the name Women in Data Science AI and ML Sweden. As you see, like the field is changing, and like, you need to also reflect that there. Now our organization has grown, so we have like, four more amazing women joining us. We are running Women in Data Science with the Stockholm conference every year. So we have done four of them so far, which is in association with the Stanford, a global initiative where, like, in a lot of countries and cities in the world, around March, there are conference featuring women on the stage and building community, developing this community. We started with that, and then we realized that we want to do more, because there is so much interest from this community here in Sweden. So we have been running mentorship programs. We have been setting up meetups and a few social events. We are also running some long-term projects. For instance, very often you hear that from conference organizers that we couldn't find a female speaker, while there are plenty of them. It's just they are modest and they don't promote themselves as much. So we are putting together a database of speakers to share externally, and also looking at the talent in general in Sweden in this area if we can. So we are talking to, for instance, to AI Sweden, if we see we could do something together to get to know the trends in Sweden and potentially collaborate with Nordic as well. So not just limit our network to Sweden.
Yeah, it's awesome initiative, and I was lucky enough to be in Stockholm for the Data Innovation Summit recently. So I met a lot of these guys and people in person, and they're all fantastic, and we're definitely on the right path. But Sahar, for I guess executives maybe watching this, what are some easy steps they could take to increase the diversity of their workforce? Do you have any tips in that respect?
I think, yeah, that's a difficult question to answer, right? So one of the things is that, like, going through talking about diversity and inclusions, there are a lot of bias there that we are not aware of. So I think taking those tests around unconscious bias, it helps us a lot to know more about like where our bias is. It's not only related to women, it could be about like, age and a lot of other things, right? Then the other thing is that diverse committee in the interviews usually also brings more diverse task, a group. And also, I think very often we are also like, the ads, if you look at the advertisements, they are not really thought through. You see advertisements that I would like to have a machine learning engineers or MLOps engineer with 10 years of experience. These titles are not even 10 years old. So someone with a high confidence, which is like more prevalent, maybe like, in like, certain genders, then they would like, look at the checklist. Okay, maybe that means software engineer, I'm fine, and I don't meet these requirements. It's okay, I still apply. And that person might be a great person, but the thing is that a lot of people don't apply, and that is very common in women. So being more mindful and run through those kind of advertisements through those who can like give input on would be something great. And I think companies are also, it's not just hiring, but it's also retaining. And I think there's a lot of challenge also without having good mentors for women in the companies to develop their career and become more senior, especially as individual contributors or impactful leaders. And that's something I think that the companies could invest on too.
Yeah, it's a good point. So at the conference a couple of weeks ago, Matthias Frast from Nordea mentioned that for AI to work, it depends on two things: people and culture. So
yeah, exactly.
We spoke about culture. Speaking about people now, I completely agree that it's not just getting people in; it's retaining that best talent in your organization. So Sahar, how do you do that then? How do you, within your team itself, what are their career trajectories? How do you avoid employee churn?
I think I learned a lot from my previous manager, and he was like, he was not trying to put the person in a box described that wanted to hire, was looking at the person and see like, is this person would be an impactful person joining to my organization, and then investing on that person, right? So like, one of the things, for instance, we do is that now we're gonna have that in 2 weeks as well. We have hack weeks where like we collect the times of like, that you could have a small hack days. We put them together and we have a chunk of 1 week. We do a good investment there of like, helping the team to come up with ideas, pair up, and like, work on that area, on topics that they like. And one of our papers, one of our good papers actually came out of one of these hack weeks. And also one of the methods that we have in production also came from one of these hack weeks. So it's quite fun. It's very rewarding. It's a small thing, but it's still like, it helps a lot in development. The other thing is that I think a lot of people thrive if you trust them and give them autonomy. And that is what we have been trying to do in our team. And it's been really rewarding. It's initially probably takes a lot of time to coach and train people, but it's amazing what they can achieve. So giving the opportunities, having more defined career track around individual contribute, because now I'm jumping to another topic, but management track historically has been very clear paths, and it's also much easier probably to measure and to progress. But if you go towards tech leads, so something like my role, or if you go towards individual contributors, especially in data science and machine learning, they are not really well defined, because if you fall into engineering department is one thing, if you fall into design or product department is another thing, and it's really hard and sometimes frustrating for individuals to learn how to grow their career. So it's good for if the companies could help and define the crafts, and what they see the craft of machine learning to be defined in their company, and how they can help individuals to grow themselves.
Yeah. Would the role of AI research lead, Sahar, do you see that a lot? Should more companies have this?
Uh, it's probably not, well, I mean, there's a lot of these roles of director of machine learning, head of machine learning, um, or research lead. I think research is not a well-defined area in companies. If you go to very small top largest companies in the world, Google, they can afford to have large research groups, right? But for other companies, it is less, and it's been a less of a priority. So research lead is kind of not that common, I would say, in smaller companies. But I would say it's important to have applied perspective as a researcher or research lead in industry, because a lot of we talked a bit about this, but a lot of solutions from research in academia cannot be directly applied in industry, and very often also industry is not aware of potential solutions that you could bring in from other domains of research to solve a problem. And that is where I think a researcher needs to grow to be able to lead research in industry.
Yeah.
It's a fun and rewarding thing, but it's also very challenging.
Yeah. So fun and rewarding. For me, research has to be one of the cooler jobs in AI. You must be very forward looking and forward thinking, Sahar. So it's a rapidly evolving space, but where are we moving next? What does the next 5 years in AI and gaming show us?
Uh, well, I think it's a difficult question, and there's a lot of predictions, especially when you get towards the end of the year. You see a lot of articles that I keep an eye on, and talks about the trends. Um, so it's hard to say, but some of it is ties to applications. So for instance, especially in the past 2-3 years, given the circumstances with COVID, a lot of attention has gone to medtech and machine learning for health. I see that continuing. There are also some trends that are more research specific, for instance, certain methods transformers and these kind of things. I think the research on reinforcement learning, the research on transformers and on explainability, especially explainability, will continue and develop further.
And so on the gaming front, there was an article this week in the BBC about the RoboCup, and I know it's sort of a different game. I know you had experience a few years ago, Sahar. Could you also introduce that topic maybe and tell us where we
Yeah,
stand in there?
yeah, sure. So, I mean, RoboCup has been around since 1996, 7, and the vision is to have and by the way, it's RoboCup with U and not O for those who are not familiar with it. But it's the goal is to get to a point where we have a team of humanoid robots that can play football against a team of human players. And the goal was for, like, by 2050, so mid-century, to be able to achieve that. And with that, like, RoboCup consists of a few leagues. So there are leagues, like, for instance, simulation, where it's focused around the distributed AI and not to think about the, like, the physical constraints of the robots, but also like the intelligence of that, where I've been working on for a few years. And then there are also like middle size, small size robots that, like, you bring in computer vision, some of the hardware of, like, wheel steering. There's humanoid part where, like, you have, like, you like, they learn stability and then learn play together. And there are also, like, in recent years, like, other parts, like, robot at work, robot at home. There's also rescue, where the agents try to rescue in a scenario that, like, they're urban disasters. So it's been a great platform, very rewarding. Every year there's a symposium. There's also, like, competitions happening. So when I was bachelor student, I joined there in the simulation. So with my teammates, we got third place award there. And I also worked for a few years as a technical committee, organizing committee, and also exec committee in RoboCop. It's been definitely a very fun journey to learn things, try out things, and uh, get to know a community of great researchers,
Yeah.
which many of them now, they are also in gaming companies or collaborate with gaming companies, and has definitely motivated me to come to this domain.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think is so amazing about gaming is, as you said earlier, this is sort of a test bed for innovation, and all the latest and greatest go through gaming, and then are generally sort of embedded into to daily life and other applications. Sahar, we've spoken about a lot, and we've spoken past the time. But any final words of wisdom from yourself before we close out the show?
Um, I mean, it's been, like, fun to talk about all of these topics. Yeah, of course, like, if you let me talk, I'll talk another probably 2 hours about these topics, because I'm really passionate. I think it's a luxury to have a job that you also enjoy it, and, like, it's fun. And I think um, it's what maybe final words is just a lot of time machine learning in recent years is considered as, like, is treated as a hype. Uh, so companies come and say that, oh, everyone is doing machine learning, so we should do machine learning. So let's build a model. I think both for the company, like, C-level, but also for like, machine learning engineers in the company, both of them, it's really important to understand the needs, so that what we build is actually relevant. And it's also important to invest and give it some time. So I mentioned about this, like, playtesting, but it was not just a one day thing that we built it. Like, it was, like, maybe, like, 2-3 years of projects, gradual projects, that got to this place that now it's in production. So be patient, be realistic, build the culture, and also for researchers or machine learning engineers, understand the needs before jumping into the state of the art and putting that in production.
Love it. Brilliant way to finish, Sahar. Words of wisdom indeed. Really appreciate your time today. We'll include some of those things in the show notes, and hopefully we'll get another 2 hours later this year or next year in person, Sahar, where we can continue the conversation.
I look forward to that, and thanks again for having me.
Thanks for watching. Now next up on altair.com/future says will be Ming Tang, Chief Data Officer at the NHS. She'll be speaking about how the UK's health service is responding to COVID-19 with a digital first approach. Hope to see you there.